I lost £14 million of other people's real money before I made anything. You learn a lot more from losing money than you do winning.
Pleased to have Albert Azis-Clauson. He's a multi-founder and exiteer. He is an advisor to HMRC. He is the CEO of Tramlines and a thought leader in the AI space.
AI is going to fundamentally transform many aspects of our economy over time.
When someone comes knocking on your door and you say, I've got this idea or product, what's your expectation around the maturity of the idea or the product?
No expectation of maturity of product or idea, absolute expectation of maturity of individuals. So Tramlines is unashamedly not for...
Welcome to another edition of Behind the Numbers, the podcast that seeks the personalities in the technology industry. But before I dive into our very special guest today, I'd like to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by Kinetic Core AI. We're a firm that helps companies grow their revenues within 12 months. So if you're interested in free growth consultancy, drop the word grow into the DMs and we'll take it from there. So really pleased to have on the show today, Albert Azis-Clauson. This gentleman is a super busy individual, right? He's a multi-founder and exiteer. He is an advisor to HMRC. He is the CEO of Tramlines. And no doubt you will see him on LinkedIn. He's very active, a lot of public speaking and a thought leader in the AI space. So it's a real privilege to have him on the show today and to be able to unpick his background, his history, but really get a view on what he thinks is happening in the future. And maybe if you're building your tech company at the moment and you're interested in selling, there may be a few nuggets in here where he can help you position it ready for a purchase. So, Albert, many thanks for coming on today. And how are you to start with?
Good. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. So yeah, before we go into sort of what's happening today with you, give us a bit of a sense of your background. Where have you come from? Where did you study, if at all? You know, where's the motivation come from? Any interesting anecdotes from your past that's really sort of shaped the person you are today and what's motivating you moving forward?
Yeah, I guess there are kind of 4 chapters in my life. The first is the ballet chapter. I grew up as a ballet dancer. I went to the Royal Ballet School. You know, it's a fun anecdote. I'm not sure it has that much impact or meaning on my life today, but people love to talk about it. Ballet dancer turned entrepreneur has a certain ring to it, despite it ultimately not really being a direct narrative. I do think that the discipline you learn at ballet is really useful. And the other thing that I think was fundamentally important to my character and who I am is the hunger for criticism, or rather the ability to take criticism more broadly. But in ballet, criticism is always framed as a gift. You are not criticized unless you're good enough to receive criticism. So it's almost seen as a compliment. So you're constantly seeking criticism, and you can never be perfect in the world of ballet. So you can only ever get better. So if you're not being criticized, it's a sign that someone doesn't think you can be better. And so I think that kind of hunger for criticism certainly leads to some later insecurities and other issues that you might have to deal with a therapist. But it was also a really useful foundation for entrepreneurialism or work in general. I could work hard and I wanted to be criticized. That's not something that a lot of people kind of come out of their adolescence as like key characteristics. The second chapter of my life is probably best articulated as academia and excitement, which was transitioning from ballet shoes to a keyboard, learning computer science and philosophy of science. So really dealing with kind of critical thinking, but also computer science and foundational logic and looking at building things. During that time, I founded charities. I went to UCL. I got a first. I didn't attend university very much, to be totally honest. I spent most of my time building charities and businesses alongside university. I was kind of famous in the administrative office for bringing in chocolates and flowers once a quarter and asking them not to kick me out of university because my grades were still good. But I built a charity to help young and disadvantaged and at-risk children with creative workshops from artists and creatives that were from the other business I was building, which was a media and arts company. And alongside that, I did business strategy consultancy and public relations consultancy for deep tech and deep science businesses. So that kind of second chapter was all about learning about the world, academia, starting to build things, getting into entrepreneurialism. The third chapter was my kind of quintessential entrepreneurial journey, which was building and selling a few companies alongside helping dozens of other companies build their own startups. I kind of raised over £100 million across a dozen or so companies by the age of 28. I'd had 3 exits, won a lot of money, but I'd also lost a lot of money. I like to tell you, I lost £14 million of other people's real money before I made anything. And you learn a lot more from losing money than you do winning. And actually, I think one of the defining characteristics of that period was it just showed me so much of the inefficiency and inequality and a kind of lack of constructiveness within the venture ecosystem. It was filled with a lot of arrogant young men who believed they could build something amazing. And a few of them do, like, unsurprisingly, when you throw enough money at enough people. And so during that period, I kind of really learned the values of failing a lot more so than I had previously, because I really hurt my ego failing. And despite ultimately coming out with a lot of success, I now never really work with people who've only had success. I find like the worst advisors to businesses are often people who've only had one successful business, because they believe what they did was correct. What they fail to see is the lack of all the kind of luck. And the fourth chapter of my life is I started doing angel investing. I hated angel investing. I went back to doing consultancy. I built out a program, a methodology of how to get from pre-seed to Series A as quickly as possible. I focused on domain expert founders, which are plethora in the UK, but tend not to build venture businesses. They tend to go and build consulting businesses. These are people who've spent 10, 20, 30, even 40 years in their industry. They have deep domain expertise, tacit knowledge, networks, relationships, trust, authority, but tend to not be the demographic or risk profile that chase a venture-backed business. So they tend to start revenue-focused consulting businesses or more mid-markets, SMEs. And I thought that they were just like obviously the best at building businesses. They're like obviously the right kinds of people to lead businesses, and yet the venture ecosystem ignored them. And the main reason for that seemed very simple. The venture ecosystem focuses on people who are good at raising money, and they are not good at raising money, so it doesn't give them money. And that was my focus. I could raise money, so I wanted to build businesses with these people. I built that very successfully, built a few businesses. It was very exciting. A bunch of people wanted to get on board. Tramlines is born. We've got a fund, we've got a commercial accelerator. It's all getting really exciting. AI is becoming a bigger and bigger part of it. And suddenly there's this pivotal moment where I realize the future of AI is going to fundamentally upturn the way the technology is built, the way that we think about SaaS, the way, or rather how much less we think about SaaS, the role of services businesses, how perfectly paced services businesses are to take advantage of the AI revolution. And it was at that point that I kind of pivoted a little bit and built a whole AI division alongside the accelerator and the fund. Had the national technology officer for Microsoft, Glenn Robinson, resign from his position and join our team full time as the managing director of this. And now really Tramlines is three things. First, it is a company that builds innovative AI native companies. We say the industrialization of intelligence through AI, taking domain expertise and plugging it into capital, a commercial accelerator and an AI accelerator with its own IP and consulting. Then we have this kind of globalization program where we take UK software and take it particularly to APAC, but to Europe, APAC, Americas. Then we have this kind of mid-market view where we're starting to look at mid-market services businesses and how we can help build them out and in some cases acquire them. And finally, we work with massive enterprises in the UK. We're talking companies that are doing 2 billion in revenue and help them do their AI transformation programs and how they adopt innovative technology and IP into their businesses. But perhaps more importantly, how they fundamentally change their economics to align with the future of how AI will change. So that was probably more than you bargained for, but that's a kind of 4-chapter story of my life.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's so much to unpack it in that opening gambit there. We've probably got enough material for about 3 or 4 podcasts. But yeah, let's touch.
Well, we could do a podcast per chapter if you want.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, mate. That sounds awesome. We could talk all day for sure. So yeah, I mean, one of the threads is the you mentioned the individual from Microsoft who's joined your team. Give us a bit of a sense of what you guys are doing, which is attracting that type of top talent. What's your mission? That's really luring these people in.
And that's just like one small example. We've got somebody who was an ex-principal at Tomoco Foresight Antimus. We've got an ex-managing partner of technology at Deloitte. We've got the founding CEO of Metro Bank, some of our other employees. So like I am judged, I think, more so by the team of people behind me than myself, which is always a really exciting place to be, because you should always be hiring people being a better, faster, stronger than you are, particularly at what they do. And what's attracted them is really, really simple. It's a really, really simple narrative. VC kind of sucks, and vast majority of people from enterprise or corporate backgrounds don't play in the VC space. You know, if you look at venture capital, it's filled with venture capitalists. They are a very specific demographic. They are startup founders and technologists, and they are people who made money in venture capital. It's quite an exclusive ecosystem, and it's exclusive for a number of reasons, but One is that it's not very appealing to people who are used to building proper businesses. It doesn't, that kind of methodology doesn't really appeal in the same way. So one really simple reason is my whole focus, revenue and discipline and lean capital models and investing as little as possible attracted a new demographic of people who didn't traditionally play in the venture space. That's the kind of boring reason. The exciting reason is AI is going to fundamentally transform many aspects of our economy over time. And it's not all going to happen today. I think there's a lot of people who talk about how AI is going to revolutionize everything tomorrow. It's not. It's going to take a long time. There are things that will change quickly. There are things that will change slowly. But one of the kind of really core concepts of any technological revolution is that there are generally two winners. One of the winners are those that exist already. So hyperscalers, Microsoft, Amazon, people who are huge and have a defensive moat of capital, of customers, of clout, of trust, of authority, who will participate and continue to participate in that revolution. The second demographic is venture companies. So of 1 in 1,000 AI companies will be lucky enough to capture an Anthropic style market share. Now, one of the really exciting facets of what we're building at Tramlines was we look at early stage revenue focused innovative businesses based around domain expertise. So something that these people can understand, they can latch onto, they can add meaningful value as early as pre-seed into building revenue, building machines. But the second thing is every company we work with acts as a kind of Trojan horse and a sensor into industries where we can understand where on the adoption curve they are, so that as we go from use case and commercialization of AI to workflows and then kind of infrastructure and eventually the industrialization of that AI within that industry, so that we're building the operating systems that industries sit on. And as I have laid out that vision, and that's a very kind of potted and unclear version of a kind of much bigger picture which is unfolding, these people saw people getting excited. They saw capital coming in more easily. They saw revenue being generated. They saw all the kind of characteristics of a real business being built, but around a vision that could be worth $1 trillion, could capture massive swathes of global industries without shooting for the moon and maybe missing, because it's built on real economic principles and fundamentals.
Amazing. So just break down a little bit for us. You've touched on it and you're deep in the weeds and all this stuff, but what is it about you guys do which is different to venture capital, that you're ironing out the inefficiencies or the imperfections in the way that that capital allocation in VC is conducted versus how you think and how you guys in Tramlines want to operate?
There's an incredibly simple way of articulating it, which is that investors are the customers of venture capitalists and companies are the customers of Tramlines. So if you're a VC, you make your money from management fees and carried interest. That is how you make your money, which means the more money you manage, the bigger your salaries, the more upside you create, the bigger your bonuses. That's how it works. You work on a 10-year life cycle, so you're looking at quite long horizons, and that creates and incentivizes certain behaviors within venture capitalists. And they're not all the same. There are some amazing venture capitalists, there are some terrible venture capitalists, there are a lot in the middle. And there are some with great attitudes that do care about their portfolio, and there are some that don't. And so I'm not necessarily saying venture capital is a bad thing. I think there are lots of examples of why it's an amazing thing. But there was a fundamental shift away from that portfolio. So the portfolio of companies in a VC are the product of a VC, which it sells to its investor base. It's selling risk within a portfolio. Tramlines has a relationship with every single one of its companies that ties its success and its value to that company inherently before the capital. So the capital then becomes a tool that we have at our disposal for the companies. Now, for the investors, you might say, but surely the investors want returns. Well, they do. But if the investors' returns are also tied to us, then we're both going to win. And the other per company basis, not just on aggregate. And then what you get, which I think is really, really exciting, is that you get this kind of incentive from Tramlines to invest less capital. So every VC is incentivized to invest more money, because the more money they can deploy, the higher their fees can be. Whereas with Tramlines, the less money we can deploy, the the more equity we protect in building the business. So we are incentivized to negotiate with ourselves on how much capital is allocated to a company. And that breeds incredible efficient behavior. It also breeds, God forbid, dividend payments to investors. It breeds earlier exits where there are interesting multiples. It breeds a whole load of activities that traditional venture just can't really facilitate in a meaningful way. But most importantly, because we take our value from the business, which means we charge money, like we're expensive to work with, we are focused on building revenue early because we can facilitate it with a huge team of operational delivery. We spend 8 hours with you every week in some cases, between 2 and 8 generally, but up to 8 hours every week of actual delivery work with you, with the most senior operators in the UK, potentially the world, working with your business from day one.
And is that all in that infrastructure around sales, marketing, finance, operations, all that good stuff? That
Absolutely everything. So you have an interim CRO, CFO, CMO, CPO, CTO sitting in your business. I'm not talking like anyone. I'm talking the guy that founded Metro Bank, the guy that ran technology for Deloitte, the guy that ran Microsoft technology in the UK. Like, these are the kinds of people that are always sitting with you on a weekly and monthly basis. And then we have a network of advisors from every industry you can imagine at an executive level. And then we have, and this is one of the key differences, it's not just advisors, it's deliverers. We then have a team of people in Tramlines who actually build these things with you. You know, when you're building your one pager, your deck, your marketing plan, your CRM, whatever it is, we're doing it with you. We're not just saying, hey, here's some advice from someone who knows loads. We're saying, here's the advice, let's build it together. And we're creating that accountability across both sides of the equation.
Are you taking equity in that company? Is that how the relationship works?
Absolutely. We take equity and cash and commission. Like I said, we're very expensive to work with. Like we
Reassuringly expensive.
well, one might say that or terrifyingly. I mean, I have no interest in working with people if they think they can do it all themselves and they want to take someone's money. Great, go and do that. Like, if you want to go and take some venture capital money or go and take some angel money or whatever it is, or a loan, and build your business and you believe that, I fully support you and I'm excited by that. But if you want to work with the best operators in the world as operational partners to your business, then you're for us. And because of that, yeah, we're going to take a chunk of your business. Yes, we're going to take we're going to take a retainer and we're going to take commission on certain things. But all to the point of, like, ultimately we make our money because you make money. And I think one of the things I've often say is, like, venture capital gives you a 1 in 1,000 chance of making 100 million quid. I want to give you 4 out of 5 chance of making 20 million. Like, that's my ambition with Tramlines.
That makes sense. Then so someone comes knocking on your door and you say, like, I've got this idea or product. What's your expectation around the maturity of the idea or the product?
So I have no expectation of maturity of product or idea. Absolute expectation of maturity of individuals. So Tramlines is unashamedly not for university dropouts as the college dropout kind of trope. That's not who we look for. If you haven't spent 10 years in your industry, at least, then we're not interested in talking to you about your idea. Like, even this was true before the age of AI. This is so much more true now. Like, technology is not defensible. I do not care whether you have built a product or not. Now, don't get me wrong. If you have built products and you have customers and you're making money and you have traction, obviously that's an indication of success. But at its core, I'm not looking for the short-termism of, do you have something now? I'm looking for, do you have in your brain the kinds of things I can turn into a really valuable business? And do you have some proof points for that? And we have what we call the 7 validation gateways. And the first validation gateway is just market validation. Is there a market? Can you access it? Does it make sense? As long as you have that and you're a domain expert, then I'm really excited to potentially work with you.
Amazing. I love it. Excellent. Now, if you wouldn't mind, let's dive into a little bit of the founder journey that you had and then the exit. Could you just talk us through a couple of examples of where you've, the founder and the creation of the business that didn't quite go as you would want it to, the sort of the failure, but then equally the one which was the stellar one, which you pin up boy.
So I make a general point of not generally talking about numbers, but I'm very happy to talk about the story of it. The first company, I was very young. Someone gave me a chunk of change, £1 million when I was 21 years old. And I worked relentlessly hard towards everything. Like, I could not have thrown myself at more things and tried to learn more. But I just believed so many kind of foundationally flawed things about how to build a business. And it was interesting because it was a real slog. Things started to go quite well. And then there was a moment, and this is something that happens to so many people, and it's something that I really optimize out for in Tramlines. We made a load of money. There was a moment where we made a load of money doing something in a not very scalable way. We decided, okay, let's forget about the technology for a second. Let's try this thing where we really engage a small group of people for a much higher ticket price and see if they'll engage. And we got it. And we made a load of money really quickly. In the course of about 2 months, we made 95% of the amount of money the company would ever make. And then our investors turned around and went, do it bigger. Go, you cracked it. We're all going to be rich. Go and just build a tech version of this and just blow it up. And guess what? Nobody bought it. It crashed, absolutely crashed and burned. Nobody was interested in buying this fully automated, fully scalable version. And and then the company had some investor problems and was forced into administration. We ended up managing to sell it, which was really exciting. And then I ended up leaving the business, and it was all kind of it was a bit of a mess, but there was some money made. It was a real kind of storming founder journey. And just to dwell on it for a second, and this is so, so important. There is this real assumption that you can be one of two businesses. You can either be a services business, or you could be a tech business. And if you're a tech business, you need 90% margins, absolute scalability. If you're a services business, you need 20% margins, and you're led by people and relationships. And the fact that there's nothing else is absolutely not true. And when we start with Tramlines companies, one of the first things I always tell our founders is, if you start here and you're trying to get here, it's okay if you get here. You can be in between the 2 points and it still be successful. This business can be worth 20 million. This business could be worth $1 billion. This business could also be worth $1 billion. This business is kind of like what Salesforce looks like. Salesforce has a huge services element to it because it's hugely engaged with the way it integrates and interacts with its customers. So there was a huge learning there about when you find something successful and when you start to find things people will pay for, don't launch into productization because it really can be to the detriment of building a company. Really take your time to build out slowly. And actually over time, you end up getting to the same scale at the same pace, but you do it with fewer people lost along the way. And then I built a whole number of other companies, both alongside that journey and subsequently. And to be honest, my first kind of proper exit was pretty underwhelming in terms of detail of excitement. I started a company, we were working together, we built something really cool, people were buying it, not really fast enough. I was a bit more savvy about deal making. I went and found a strategic company backed by a private equity investor who was excited about growth in that space. They were a services heavy company. Technology would drastically improve their services. I pitched to them that we could be a multiplier to their business. Their business is worth X. Our business is worth 1% of X, but our business applied to their business was worth 30X or whatever it was, So when I went back to them, I was like, look, the value of our business may only be this small number or this, whatever the number was, but actually our business attached to your business becomes so much more valuable. This is how I want to pitch it. And so pitching it to that private equity firm, which led to that sale, was quite a fun negotiation that ended in, a very exciting exit. And then there's been, 1 or 2 more kind of things that have been on the side, which I've not been fully from start to finish involved in, but have been a significant shareholder in. But I think actually, as I say, that first business, the things that went badly, actually the business is still running today, but the things that went badly along the way, God, I learned so much about how to build a business.
Yeah, interesting. So if there's a founder and a person listening to this thinking about their exit, what do you think, if you were to say, what are the core things that need to be in place for them to be ready for that?
So, there's a lot of answers to this question, all of which could make sense. So let's talk about a few very specific ones. Number 1, really boring. You need to have really good accounts. If you don't have a year, 2, 3 years of really well put together accounts which show exactly what's been happening in the company, you just look risky. And risk in an acquisition is a big no-no because acquisitions are expensive. So if you can't make sure all of your due diligence and stuff is packed up, then it's very hard to sell your business. And or that will be reflected in the price. Boring but true. Number two, the only way you can set yourself up for an exciting and genuinely exciting acquisition is if you focus on your profit, your operational, your overall company profit. I mean, I say EBITDA, but it varies depending on who's judging it. The reason for this is really, really simple. You could get lucky and you could find a strategic that's particularly interested, or you could find an investment firm or a private equity house that's specifically interested in what you're doing. But if you're looking to optimize for a sale that you can kind of plan for, the only real way is to optimize for a profit at a certain scale within private equity or within some sort of normal liquid market. So I would look up who is buying people in your space consistently, not ad hoc. Who is buying people consistently? What kind of size of company are they buying? And what kind of profit margins and what kind of multiples? And what I would actually say is, which I've very rarely seen people do, but is super effective, is if you're looking to sell to, let's say, a mid-market private equity that requires 8 million of revenue or 6 million of revenue or 10 million of revenue at a 20% margin, and they give you a 6 or 8x multiple on that, and you're at half that, go and find another operator in the same space doing the same thing and see if they want to do a merger before, so that you can do a sale. I think people really rarely look for that, but it's actually it's a really sensible and reasonable way to look for exit. Private equity, and it's really simple. The reason they won't make acquisitions under a certain size is the cost of acquiring a company is quite large. It costs a lot of money in legals alone to do that. So if scale is an issue and you're really interested, go and see if there's somebody who'll do a no cash merger in order to sell after, and potentially even talk to private equity firms to see if they'd be interested post-merger. The final piece of advice I'll give on preparing for sale is, from as early as possible in your business, look at your business fundamentals and economics. And that sounds super obvious, but it's so easy in the venture space particularly, but in I think VC, which is such a tiny percentage of total capital and such a tiny percentage of total businesses, is the biggest story by so much. So people always think about venture capital stories as how to sell your business. The truth is, the earlier you start looking at profitability and revenue and defensibility of your economics, the easier it will be to have a sale. If you're waiting to get more investment in, it's always going to be harder. And I think, people use investment as a proxy for success, and it isn't. A proxy for success ultimately is pretty much purely revenue. So don't be afraid of chopping and changing services with technology and building out something that's not quite core part of the business, but does fit in and someone wants to buy it, because ultimately, revenue will be the basis upon which you are judged. So focus on that kind of disciplined P&L building.
Amazing. No, that's some really great advice. And actually, your point about the pre-merger merging before then going to increase the multiple to private equity, I think that's a really interesting perspective, and one that perhaps is not thought about as much.
I've only seen someone do it once, but it worked incredibly effectively, and I don't know why more people don't do it. It's so easy to go and find a bunch of other SMEs that are similar size and be like, hey guys, do you want to gang together and then sell?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just speaking to you, Albert, you're a really gregarious individual, right? And even from the early days on your entrepreneurial journey, you seem to be able to attract capital. Yeah, you talked about that early stage. So what do you think it is about you is able to do that consistently during the course, even from a young age?
I'm an arrogant, articulate white man with a posh accent.
Yeah. So what do you think it is?
I honestly think that is a big part of it. A lot of capital is assigned to people that look and sound like where the capital is coming from. We're told that young white men build businesses, and I honestly think that's a big part of it. I'd love to say that I'm amazing, but I really believe that had I walked into the room and not had a posh accent and be articulate and come from a family that spoke in a certain way and spoke about certain things, that would have been much harder to even feel comfortable in that room, let alone get money out of people. So I would not underestimate the power of that alone. I think that I'm fairly charismatic. I talk to people. I'm good at talking to people. I'm articulate. I do generally either know what I'm talking about or have read quite a lot. I love learning. So I love that. I think Now, the reason I raise money, I hope, is slightly different, but I think it'd be hard to say that the age of 21 that I was experienced or brilliant. I definitely had more experience than my peers, and I built more businesses and stuff than my peers, and I was excited. And I think the reason I raised money in the early part of my career is that investors looked at me and they went, beyond the things I've already said, they kind of went, oh, wow, this guy's going to work really hard. And I feel like he's the kind of person that will do something. Now, again, part of the reason it felt like that is because I looked and sounded a certain way, but because bear in mind, I lost a lot of their money. The other reason is I think that they kind of went, there's a lot of energy and excitement, and this is the kind of personality that's likely to build something. You know, we get very attached to, again, coming back to VC and venture capital ideas, it's like you attach personality traits to success. Always, there's a lot of conversation about like women are statistically better at managing a P&L than men, but statistically less likely to gregariously ask for loads of money.
Yeah.
And I think that like a lot of those kind of a lot of those stereotypes end up begetting themselves. So I think that when I was younger, a lot of my access to capital was really about my willingness to walk into rooms confidently and boldly and not be nervous and talk like I deserved £1 million, which, like, let's be honest, not many people could do because they haven't had a background that would allow them to. I like to think that I'm clever and hardworking and that I've come up with interesting ideas and I've made interesting connections. But, you know, if you actually look at the data in my first business, it's not really true. It is now, but yeah. And I think the final part actually is that, like, you know, university, I'd built 3 businesses, built 2 charities, got a first class degree at the highest in my year, and not really attended university. Like, I think people saw that and saw that there was something special going on, but I'm not sure that that's actually real. I think that's just, you know, university's not that hard. Not many people turn up that much. But yeah, that's, I think, a part of it.
Awesome. Great. No, that's a great answer. So yeah, final question. We could talk for hours. It's a really interesting individual, right? But yeah, so what's the so just give us, what's the one piece of advice, if you reflect now, what one piece of advice have you given your 18-year-old self that would have stood you in good stead on your journey in entrepreneurship thus far?
Not gonna lie, I feel like I've kind of nailed it now. So it kind of feels like everything I did was probably a necessary part of getting here. But I mean, I say nailed it, I'm very much still on a journey. I think probably rest more. I have never really took holidays or have never really rested. I think there is an immediateness to entrepreneurialism that is largely fabricated in your own head. It's not real. And I think that I have spent too much time working myself into disrepair and poor health than I needed to in reality. And I think there's a health and mental health side to that, but there's actually a productivity and efficacy side, which is whenever I have slowed down, I have unwittingly sped up. So whenever I have actually taken time off to think or spend time with friends, or, you know, even if it's to do a strategy day with my business partner, or those have actually been like pivotal moments in my career pretty consistently. And whenever I've worked myself into oblivion, beyond sending a lot of emails and getting a lot of tasks done, it's very rarely begot like the next major piece of value. It's usually in slowing down that I've actually found my greatest success.
Amazing. I love that. And I think you've spoken about it on a few occasions around failure as well. And I love the way you seem to be able to take these things that seem to be a backward step or problematic and turn them into something that's really positive and pushing you forward in the right direction. So that's sage advice and yeah, really interesting stuff. So Albert, just tell us, if anyone's interested in finding out about Tramlines, where do they need to go and where do they need to find you if they want to hear more of this good stuff?
Just tramlines.com. One of the most amazing things about Tramlines now is that I'm kind of the least interesting part of it. So there's now a whole team of amazing people doing amazing things. So go and find them out. Seek out the directors and the team who are really the most amazing part of it now. So yeah, tramlines.com, and everyone's details are there and you can get in touch. But yeah, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, it's been a great conversation and really excited to see what Tramlines is going to produce moving forward, and whatever venture you end up doing in the future. No doubt Tramlines isn't going to be the only thing that you've got on your plate.
I think it might be. I think Tramlines might be the big thing forever.
Amazing. Well, if that's the case, then all the best, and I will keep a close eye on that progress. So Albert, many thanks once again, and yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.